Welcome back. Welcome to the second part of It's Closer Than You Think. I hope that you've watched the first DVD or the first part of It's Closer Than You Think, because last year, October, November 2008, I recorded a DVD entitled It's Closer Than You Think, and on that DVD, I said that it was at the time that the financial crisis was just emerging in the world, and I explained that there were four things that were coming together at the time, which were leading to the possibility of the launch of the New World Order. I've had feedback from many of you right over the world, and I encourage that because we like to be able to know what's going on in various places around the world. If you'd like to contact me, do so directly on email, info@homebase.org.za. Many of the emails that have come back have been positive. Many of them have been confused, and many of them have been negative. People have said, you can't say these things, and you don't have any grounds on which to base your judgments. So what I just decided to do is come back to the studio and record for you the update to the first part. This is now May 2009, and if you remember, if you've watched the DVD, you will remember that in the previous DVD I said, let's just see where we're going to be in January or February 2009. Let's see how things pan out and see what happens. Well, we're now in May already of 2009, and now we can look back in history and compare November to where we are now and see whether anything has happened. Just to recap the previous section of It's Closer Than You Think, do you remember the text word in Revelation 13? Where it spoke about the Antichrist? It said, and he, the Antichrist, causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads, and that no man might buy or sell save he that had the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. Do you remember that discussion? Well, we had to go to the beast and say, please, Mr. Beast, could you tell me what your mark is? Remember we did that. Well, I would like to take you back to a graphic and show you. Do you remember what Jesus said? Come unto me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Ezekiel 20 says, moreover also I gave them my Sabbaths to be a sign, an oath between me and them, that they might know that I am the Lord that's sanctifying them. So the Lord gave us the Shabbat, the Sabbath oath, the oath, the signature or the identifying characteristic. He calls it his sign between him and his people. And it's the fourth commandment, as you can see on this graphic, that is a problem today. You can see that the fourth commandment has been chiseled away by satanic influences. You know, it's because the fourth commandment is God's seal. That's why Satan needs to remove it, because it proves his authority. And it's always amazing for me when I read the commandments to see how the one commandment that says, remember the Sabbath day, is the one commandment Christians want to forget. So where the Lord says, come unto me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden, so the Pope says the same thing. He says, come unto me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. He says, Sunday is their mark of authority. The church is above the Bible, and this transference of Sabbath observance is proof of that fact. And the Pope demands respect for Sundays. So where the Lord's asking you for Sabbath worship, the Pope is saying, I want Sunday worship. And can you remember the colors that we were discussing? We were discussing certain elements about why the papacy would want this. Well, that's the question. The question is, why? Why would the papacy call for governments worldwide to institute a Sunday law? Well, would you remember? Why would the papacy call for governments worldwide to put in civil legislation about Sunday law? Do you remember we looked at Jesus' colors, and Jesus had 3 colors? And then we looked at the Antichrist, and he had 2 colors? Well, here's a graphic looking down inside St. Peter's Cathedral, down towards Bernini's Canopy. And you'll see the red and the scarlet. In other words, I beg your pardon, the purple and the scarlet. And you'll see the scarlet, the cardinals are even sitting in the form of the Baal Hadad, right? That sun symbol that I've explained over and over in my lectures. In the middle there where the altar is, that's where the Eucharist would be. That's where the Baal Hadad, the center would be of the Baal Hadad. So the colors of the Vatican, besides the white and the gold and the black, etc., the colors of the Vatican are exactly what they are according to the Bible, purple and scarlet. Now, two questions I have. Number one, can you remember what color was missing? Can you remember it was the color blue? Now, everything that God has, Satan steals and he manipulates it for himself. And do you think Satan would be satisfied if Jesus, God's high priest, the Christ, has got three colors? Would Satan's high priest, the Antichrist, be satisfied with two colors? No, obviously not. So my question is, how is the Antichrist going to bring in the color blue? Do you remember what the blue stood for? It was for the obedience to the commandments of God. It was a symbol of obedience. So blue in the Bible is obedience to the commandments and the law of God. So if the papacy wants the blue, it's going to mean that he has to be subjective to the authority of God, which he can't do. So he cannot have the blue. But my question remains, how is he going to bring in the color blue? Do you remember blue laws? Well, I give you you can go and look in any encyclopedia you want, but I'm using a free encyclopedia, Wikipedia, that you can also go and have a look there. And you'll see that it says blue law. A blue law is a type of law designed to enforce moral standards, particularly the observance of Sunday as a day of worship or rest, and a restriction on Sunday shopping. Last time in the previous DVD, I actually asked you, go and have a look. Well, I'm actually bringing it to you now because that way it's easy. It's all on one DVD. So a blue law is a law governing restrictions on Sunday shopping, Sunday legislation, somehow to protect Sunday. Now, David Rockefeller had this quote, and he said, "This present window of opportunity during which a truly peaceful and interdependent world order might be built will not be open for too long. We are on the verge of a global transformation. All we need is the right major crisis, and the nations will accept the new world order." So what they need is the right major crisis. Now, how do they do that? That means they have to create the right crisis. If you want to make sure you get the right crisis, it means you have to create the right crisis. And if I take you to the the council, the Supreme Council of the 33rd degree of the ancient and accepted Scottish Rite of Freemasonry, you can see in the middle there is their slogan, Ordo ab Chaos, which means order out of chaos. There you can see the phoenix rising out of the ashes, which is the symbol of the order coming out of chaos. This is also the symbol of the coat of arms of South Africa, right? That comes from Hegel. Do you remember we discussed Hegelianism, the Hegel principle, which is you take thesis and you rub it against antithesis or antithesis. You rub them up and out comes synthesis. You take the blacks and you take the whites, you rub them together and out comes democracy. Well, that's what they did in South Africa, and that's what they do, ordo ab chaos. So they have to create the right chaos in order to manipulate the system to bring the right type of order. Now, I would like specifically for the South African audiences to give you some background before we look at the wider audience. Let's look at, well, we've just been through an election process in South Africa. And we have a new president coming in, Jacob Zuma. And it's critical that we have a look at what is the belief system. What does Jacob Zuma promote? Well, directly after 1944, certain elements started to come in which weren't there as openly as before. 1994 was the date that the white government handed over to the black government. Here's a quote from 2001. Addressed by Deputy President Jacob Zuma, 18th of January 2001, and I'll highlight the words for you that you can see them. Africa is staking a claim for its full participation in shaping of a new world order, right? To show you that even in little South Africa, that message is also being preached. And it wasn't just in 2001 that he said it. Here's another example in 2002 where he promoted the same idea. As you can see, it's quite small writing, so I'll zoom in for you. This is the 23rd of January, 2002. Mr. President, our friendship is also strengthened by our common pursuit of a new world order that is just, fair, and peaceful. So again, Mr. Zuma saying that one of the main objectives in his role inside the leadership of South Africa is to bring South Africa into the new world order. When Thabo Mbeki became president of South Africa, one of the first things he did, as you can see from this BBC News article, is that he called for a new world order. You can see underneath the picture, it says, the new president of South Africa, Thabo Mbeki, has called for a new world order responsive to the needs of the poor. So he's calling for a new world order, one of the very first things he did. And then that was on June 25th, 1999. A little bit later, in 27th of August 2002, 3 years later, he called again. Read this with me. Mbeki calls for a new world order. In today's rap, Mbeki calls for a new world order, Cheney bangs the drum, etc., etc., and Chief Rabbi issues a warning to Israel. So Thabo Mbeki, the president of South Africa, calling, we need a new world order. We need a new world order. Right. Now, a couple of months ago, Thabo Mbeki stepped down, and South Africa received a new interim president to hold the fort between Thabo Mbeki and the new president coming in. What did this gentleman have to say? And please look at the date on this. This is BUA News, and you'll see there it's the 30th of January, 2009. Listen to what it says, and I've underlined it for you, but I'll read the whole thing. Now is a very good time to position and prepare for the upswing. The African continent has been least affected by the global financial crisis, he said, adding that after the global recovery, listen to this, after the global recovery, there will be a new order. We hope that this development is embraced constructively by the developed world. Listen carefully. The new global economic order must see Africa at the center, not the periphery. And just the last bit there says, said President Motlanthe. Right? So you can see that as you step into the role of leadership, one of the very first things you have to do to make sure that the whole world knows you're in line is to call for a new world order. And that's what the president did, and he's been part of the discussions, including the G20 Summit. But he wasn't alone, because the finance minister of South Africa, Trevor Manuel, also went along to these big discussions to try and figure out what's going to happen with the world economy. And on the 17th of March, 2009, Trevor Manuel had an interesting comment. As you can see from MoneyWeb, Trevor Manuel calls for a new world order. So over and over and over, the leadership of South Africa are making the noises about a new world order. Now, I hope that from just the one DVD that you had, It's Closer Than You Think Part 1, I hope that you are able to see and realize that this is not conspiracy, this is fact. There's a movement towards a new world order, and all they need is the right crisis, and then the world will accept the new world order. And what about our new presidency? What's going to happen with Jacob Zuma as a president? Well, in South Africa, one of the things that has happened with this democracy is, especially Christianity, but religions have been eroded, right? The importance of religion has been eroded. But yet, you can see, as Bible prophecy predicts, the coming together again of religion and politics. Religion and politics. And here's an example of that from News 24. Zuma says, God is for the ANC. The church's support for the ANC was an unequivocal Bible or biblical declaration that if God is for us, who can be against us? So he's quoting the Bible and he's saying, God is for the ANC. Nobody will be able to stop us, because if God is for us, who will be against us? And please note that that was in March of 2009. We're in May? March. That's only 2 months ago. Now, there were 4 specific aspects that I referred to in the presentation last time. I said they need, in order to have a new world order, they need to have, number 1, all the computers in the world being able to communicate with one another. So they needed a common platform, and they needed the right major crisis. They needed a technology meltdown, which we saw happen in Y2K. It didn't happen, but it was enough to get all the world's computers talking on the same platform. Then they needed a global political focus. They needed a global political threat, which we saw was 9/11. They needed a global environmental focus, which the high priest of global warming, Al Gore, has now done a very good job on telling the whole world about global warming. And then I said, what the last thing they're going to need is a global financial management system. And I predicted that the financial crisis that was happening at the time would lead to the New World Order, because those 4 aspects sews everything up and allows them then to launch the New World Order. I obviously didn't know what was coming down the line, but I said, let's just see where we are in the beginning of next year. Well, there we are now. So now I'm looking back, and I'd like to show you in this presentation what has happened since the previous time we were with you up to today. One of the things I want to refer to first is I want to take you back to the year 2000, the New American Century. This is a document that was penned out by Dick Cheney and Donald Rumsfeld. It was called the Project for a New American Century. It was the blueprint that they would follow when they won the presidency a few months later. Among a couple other things, it states the following: our plans will take a long time to accomplish, absent from some catastrophic event, such as a new Pearl Harbor. Our plans, meaning for a new world order, are going to take a long time to come right, unless we have some catastrophic event like a new Pearl Harbor. Now, why is that a key word? Well, the words Pearl Harbor, to those of us that have done the research, make absolute sense. You see, Pearl Harbor obviously was one of the things that happened during the Second World War, and documents regarding Pearl Harbor have been kept secret for 50 or 60 years, I can't remember exactly. But after that, they have to be released to the public. So when the time had elapsed, those documents became available for the whole world to read. And shock of all shock and horror of all horrors, reading the documentation, the secret documents of government at the time, you can see very, very clearly how America knew beforehand that the bombing was going to take place in Pearl Harbor. Not only did they know, they put more soldiers there so that the American soldiers would be blown up and be shot. And that way, America would never be able to get the blame for what happened at Pearl Harbor. So Pearl Harbor is a signal, or are signal words for saying, we know what's going to happen before it happens, so when it happens, it's happening for a reason, even if it happens to our own people. Go and have a look on the internet for Pearl Harbor exposed, or Pearl Harbor uncovered, or Pearl Harbor the truth, and then you'll see what I mean. Now, just about the time of the financial collapse, in fact, as you'll see from the next article, October 6th, 2008, there was something came up in the news. Pope Benedict declared that the world's financial systems are built on sand. And please note, you'll see, when you're reading about Pope Benedict, how often you'll see Obama's face on the same page, subliminally linking the two for mankind, to see the connection. But there the Pope says, be careful, because what you have, your wealth, has been built on sand. And a couple of days later, that was the 10th of October, 4 days later, bang, down went the European and Asian markets. They started to plunge again. And the world economy, they said October 12th, 2008, is near meltdown. But then this article came up, and look at the date, January 19th, 2009. The title is, Warren Buffett says that the United States is enduring an economic Pearl Harbor. Right? You pick that up? Warren Buffett, a billionaire investor, says that the United States, what you're seeing with the collapse of the global economy and the collapse of the American economy, this is an economic Pearl Harbor, which, as I've just explained, means they knew it was going to happen before it happened. They put their money into specific areas so that it could create a collapse. Somebody pulled the plug, somebody gave the signal, and the soldiers in Pearl Harbor were shot. Somebody pulled the plug, and down went all the markets around the world. Now this is, did you notice some of those banks were 200 years old? But all of the banks, all of the world, all at the same time just collapsed, right? It was like watching a well-coordinated ballet, as if all the ballerinas were lifting their legs at the same time. So all the banks were doing same moves all at the same time. It was fascinating. But Bible prophecy tells us in Revelation 18 that the merchants have waxed rich through the abundance of her delicacies, Rome's delicacies. So, understanding that there's a link in the Bible between Rome and business, or Rome and stock exchanges, it's not difficult then to look into the stock exchanges and say, can we find something there which you wouldn't normally find? And here's a perfect example. In Manila, in the Philippines, here you can find a Roman Catholic priest raising the Eucharist during a mass which is held after the first day trading of the year at the Philippine Stock Exchange in Manila. So, perfect example, right? You've got the first day's trading, and then you've got the mass dedicating whatever that has happened there to their God, right? Not the Bible God, their God. Now, as the markets crashed, do you remember who stepped up to assist? Who came in and said, we'll bail you out, we'll help you out? Do you remember who it was? Well, here's an article from Sky News. Government is to take stake in banks. You'll probably remember that article. Here's another one. Treasury is planning to take the shares in banks. Now, I mentioned when I was speaking to you last time that that's not just a $700 billion gift. What they're doing with that is they're saying, right, you give me your shares, I'll give you the money. It's a trade-off. It's not a bailout gift. It's a trade-off. I want your shares. Now, associated with shares goes voting power. And I had people comment and tell me that the shares that are being sold within these companies are only non-voting shares. But I'd like to challenge that, because as you'll see in a couple of minutes, it's not just non-voting shares that have been put on the line. The question is why? Why does the government want shares in banking institutions? Why would what are shares? Do you remember? We've just explained it. Shares are control. So when people are thinking it's the safe shares without voting powers, I'd like you to just hold on, because towards the end of this presentation, I'll give you an example of what's going on behind the scenes. But I'm still asking, why would the government want shares in banking institutions? You see, the Bible says that no man might buy or sell. And that's the key. When are we going to look at Bible prophecy to understand world events? You see, that's what we need to do. No man is going to be able to buy or sell. So, what has happened during 2009, towards the end of 2008 and these first couple of months and weeks in 2009? Well, it's quite exciting. A lot has happened. And the previous DVD of mine was bang on the button. So let's have a look at what's happened over this period. Gordon Brown and Cameron outline rival green visions. A new world order is needed to save the world. And then on the 6th of April 2009, there was a big push for the new world order. And this is the Far East. So if I go back, Europe is pushing for a new world order. The Far East is pushing for a new world order. As you can see here, on April 10th, 2009, Russia and Iraq call for a new world order. And it wasn't just them. This happened previously in history. Let me just leave that picture of Hitler for a while, and then we discuss this idea of a New World Order. A New World Order is a single government worldwide, right? Which they've been trying to get through various elements. It is not a conspiracy. What I've shown you from Jacob Zuma to Motlanthe to Thabo Mbeki, Russia is calling for it, China's calling for it, the Middle East is calling for it. The whole world is calling, please give us a new world order. So what is this world order and how does it work? Well, the New World Order, as I say, is a single political entity that controls the entire globe. But it's not just that, it goes a bit deeper than that as well. Have a look at this picture as I showed you just now. As you can see, this is Hitler greeting the Catholic Church. In fact, these Catholics were very supportive. The Catholic Church was very supportive of Hitler. Here you can see where he holds these big speeches and he has the thousands and thousands of people standing to his attention. He greets the Pope himself and has the support of the highest authorities within the Vatican. Here's an interesting picture. On the right, you can see the SS, the Nazis, and on the left, in fact, on the right, what I'm showing you there is Joseph Mengele, and on the left, you've got the Catholics also raising their hand and saying, Heil Hitler. My question to you is, who's that guy in the middle? You might not recognize him, so I'll make it a little bit clearer. That man in the middle was a young man called Joseph Ratzinger, who now today is known as Pope Benedict XVI. Now, this just so happens to be the man who controls today the Roman Catholic Church, right? As we know. But so what does this have to do with world politics? I want you to notice in that picture you saw Ratzinger standing between the Nazis, politics, and the church. Now he's continued with that role, now that he's the Pope, to try and bring together church and state. And I showed you in the previous presentation how he now says that the church's role in politics is for the good of all. So he's trying to bring the Roman Catholicism into the political arena. But as this article tells us, like Bush, Hitler also offered a new world order of peace. So this new world order is not a young idea. It's something that's come a long way. In fact, in 1917 already, they were starting to plan how they could manipulate that and come up with artificial crises to come up with a new world order. And when Hitler was given his commission to go and do what he had to do, he did it with absolute precision and to great admiration of the Catholic Church. You see that he was a pawn that was running towards a new world order. But it wasn't just him. Since then, other dictators have also come up with the idea of a new world order. People like Muammar Gaddafi, Saddam Hussein he called for it. All over the world there's this calling for a new world order. But what is it about a person like Hitler, a dictator, that they need in order to become successful in their role? Well, number one, they need to be charismatic. Number two, they need to somehow be different to the normal people. Number three, their charisma that they have, they must exude in their preaching or in their speaking when they are speaking to crowds, which causes, number four, the crowds to flock en masse to come and listen to this dictator. That's what they had with Hitler's days. Hundreds of thousands of people came to listen to him and willingly bowed down and said and were absolutely enthralled. Mein Führer, they would say, you know. And these are ideas which, if you look at the TV today, you can see again. When Barack Obama is speaking, hundreds of thousands of people crying their eyes out because their leader has come, their savior, and almost like a god on earth. Now, last time in the previous presentation, I showed you this image of McCain and Obama, left and right. Behind them is Cardinal McCarrick showing that the Catholic Church is backing whatever happens in the election. They will be behind it and in support of it. And I've had ridicule from people all over the world who've said that that is not a signal picture. That is not a way of showing what the intention is. And so I said, Lord, if that's the case, then you show me. If I'm doing something wrong, I will come back to the studio, I will record it differently, and I'll make sure that the whole world knows that I made an error. And I asked the Lord to please send me some information which I could show to either show correction or show that it was correct. And the Lord gave me this picture from the presidential election, the race that was on at the time between Al Gore and George Bush. There you have the picture I've just shown you between McCain and Obama. There you have the picture between George Bush and Al Gore. Can you see both of them, the church backing them? These are what is called this is what is called a signal picture. And if I replace the one at the bottom with Hitler, it's exactly the same thing. The Pope and Catholicism backing the religious leaders. So you can see again how this idea is being marketed through the media channels. And now, amazingly enough, it's not only called the New World Order, as you can see on Time magazine, it's now even called Barack Obama's New World Order. And look at the date, April 3rd, 2009. Wow, it's been a busy time. By the way, for those of you that have watched the God's Final Call series, you will remember that I showed the bloodlines, the family ties between George Bush and the various people, and how Al Gore was actually a cousin of George Bush, and didn't matter if you took George Bush or Al Gore, either one would have been the same family. Well, you won't believe it, but maybe you will. Read this article and you'll see that BBC News explains that Obama is a distant cousin of George Bush. It has emerged that Barack Obama is a 10th cousin once removed of the man whose job he wants, George W. Bush. Isn't that incredible? Just like with the rest of the presidential elections, this one seems to have somehow managed to get family again into the seat of power. And what happened in London at the G20 Summit? This is the group of 20 industrialized nations that are coming together to discuss how to further the world's economies and produce more money and affluence and help the poor. Well, at the time of the G20 Summit, the crash had happened 4 months before that, 5 months before that. So when they got together in April, end of March, beginning of April it started, for those 2 or 3 days in London, the main agenda was about this financial crisis. And as you can see from Yahoo News, quite clearly, the decision was that the G20 is going to order spending to usher in the New World Order. So the decision made at the G20, what I was saying last year is I was saying the last thing they need is a financial crisis. Once you have the financial crisis, you can then get a group of people somewhere in the world to come up with legislation, to put enough money together to start the New World Order. And that's exactly what happened on April 3rd. Right? You can see from brisbanetimes.com.au that the G20 was even planning the New World Order. This video clip is probably the easiest way. Instead of me saying they made an announcement, or Gordon Brown came and said the following will be happening, I can just show you the video clip and then you can make your own mind up what he says. Listen to how he explains a New World Order as a result of the financial crisis and as a result of the discussions they're having at the G20, where Trevor Manuel was calling for a New World Order, the same thing. Now Gordon Brown actually gives the announcement. Listen to this.
As well, for the first time we have a common approach round the world to cleaning up banks' balance sheets and restoring lending. We are engaging in a deep process of reform and restructuring of our international financial system for now and for the future, and we have maintained our commitment to help the world's poorest, and we have put more money aside for that and also for a green recovery. These are not just a single collection of actions. This is collective action, people working together at their best. I think a new world order is emerging, and with it the foundations of a new and progressive era of international cooperation. We have resolved that from today we will together manage the process of globalization to secure responsibility from all and fairness to all. And we've agreed that in doing so, we will build a more sustainable and more open and a fairer global society.
Did you hear what he said? A new world order is finally emerging. They've been trying and trying and trying and trying. And now they've been able to, with the financial crisis, manipulate it to such an extent that now the new world order is in place. All they will need is the International Monetary Fund to take the position and lead the world to the submission of the World Bank. So they'll have to bolster the International Monetary Fund to take on more responsibility. And that's exactly what happened at the G20. But it was interesting for me to see on the 1st of April in 2009 how CNN was actually saying that the crisis may result in the New World Order. Look at this. You can see CNN.com, crisis may lead to a new world order. And then look at this. These are the words that if you're in the inner circle, you understand exactly what they mean. 3rd of April 2009, a new world order emerges from chaos. Order out of chaos. Ordo ab chaos. The new world order emerges out of chaos. It's actually very sad to see how simple it is. But if you don't understand the language, it doesn't mean anything. And because of what happened there and the bolstering up, the quadrupling of the billions of dollars, I think the IMF was supported with 250 billion. They pushed it up to 500 and then up to, I think it's $1 trillion or $750 billion. There's a new level of responsibility from the International Monetary Fund, and I said that what we will need is a central management system, a central banking management system, which I believe will be headed up by the International Monetary Fund. And now people like Michael Hudson are able to write something as clearly as this to say, the International Monetary Fund now rules the world. So there you have it. Some of the many things that have happened during the last couple of days and couple of weeks. One other interesting thing that happened at the April talks in London, the G20, was that Russia and China started to call for a global currency. Here you can see the article. This is Medvedev, the leader of Russia, talking about a super currency. They want a super currency worldwide. Now, as you know, probably the dollar is generally the currency that supports all other currencies. And when they said this, they thought that America would go up in smoke and say, you can't do that. We want the dollar to be in place. And you know what happened? Read this article. Right? You can see there, this is the 27th of March, 2009. The US backing for world currency stuns the markets. See, what happened is, when they started calling for a single world currency, they thought there would be a big uproar. But no, America, they were busy with a new Pearl Harbor, so they said that's exactly what we need. We need a new global currency. And come on, let's discuss this. And that shook the markets because they thought that that was the last thing America wanted. So in America, we're looking at a currency. Do you remember what it was? I showed you last time, the Amero. We've got the euro. We've looked at that. What about Africa? Do you think Africa might have its own currency? Well, obviously not, I hear people say. Absolutely impossible. Do you remember I explained the 4 sections? You have got the European Union, the African Union, the Pacific Union, and the European Union. Right? Well, those 4 sections are going to channel the world underneath this one world government. But at the moment, we don't have an African Union as such. There's not, like the United States of America is a sort of a union. If you bring Canada and Mexico in, you've got a whole continent under one union. So how are they going to do that for Africa? Well, the first thing they have to do is call for a single African currency. And when did that happen? Have a look at the article. Africa seeks a single currency, right? Interesting to see the comments there. And when did that happen? You see it under the word Africa? March 8th, 2009. Sunday Nation, Sunday, March 15th, 2009. Africa is now going to adopt a single currency. So just like I said, we're going to, remember I gave you the article about Satanic getting rid of passports? Well, not only are they going to get rid of the Satanic passports, but it looks like it's going to be a single currency. But how are they going to patrol the borders with this? What they have to do is they're going to have to somehow change the African Union into something more powerful. Did that happen? Well, have a look at these couple of articles and you'll see what happened late last year. 29th of August 2008, Muammar Gaddafi was made Africa's King of Kings. A meeting of more than 200 African kings and traditional rulers has bestowed the title of King of Kings on the Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi. Do you know anything about Muammar Gaddafi? Do you know that he's not really in for democracy, right? This man is a dictator. And Africa, the whole of Africa, has said, you are our King of Kings, sir. Wrong answer. I have one Lord of Lords and one King of Kings, and that is my Lord Jesus Christ. But when it comes to African politics, it's different because now he's the King of the Kings of Africa. How does this affect the African Union? Well, interestingly enough, on the 3rd of February 2009, the following article came up. Gaddafi, who is now the new African Union chairman, will seek a single state. Oh, is that possible? Gaddafi, Muammar Gaddafi, now that he's in charge of the African Union, are you going to look for a single, like a United States of Africa? Is that possible? Well, read the next article with me and you'll see this happened on the 2nd of February this year. African leaders strike a new deal on a union government. Listen to these words. The African leaders agreed to disband the African Union Commission and create a more powerful African Union authority to act as a temporary union government as efforts are made to create a sovereign, listen, United States of Africa. Wow, there you go. Unbelievable. Bible says the whole world will give their power over to the beast. And this is what's happening. You've got to get everyone channeled together. Let's look at a different section of this article. Down at the bottom, it says, we are now moving closer to the formation of a United States of Africa. So can you believe it? Not only do we have a United States of America, but now they're moving to a United States of Africa. What else can we see about this? Did you notice that this wasn't all over the news and the whole of South Africa and the whole of Africa was up in arms about it? Listen to this article, and this, as you can see, comes from the own government, the South African government. Please notice on the top there, you'll see the phoenix rising out of the ashes. And this is the phoenix with the pyramid in the middle with the capstone in place. And the 7 sun rays of the sun god Mitra. This is sun worship. Let's find out what they say in this article. The body will be headed by a president and a vice president. And the commissioners will become secretaries charged with portfolios. So this United States of Africa is going to have a president and a vice president. Just like the United States of America. That's where they are leading us. And that's why we now need an African currency, one currency for the whole of Africa. And what do you think Gaddafi thinks about this? Because South Africa is going to have a democracy, and Zimbabwe is going to have what they're doing, and so is going to have what they're doing. And then, quite interestingly enough, this is all happening in a very short space of time. Listen to this article. Right? It says there, 4th of February 2009, that Gaddafi condemns Africa democracy. The new African Union chairman, Libya's leader, Muammar Gaddafi, has said that the multi-party democracy in Africa leads to bloodshed. So, according to him, multi-party democracy leads to bloodshed. Well, that's a nice way to hide behind it. What he's looking for is a dictatorship, a single currency, single state all over Africa. And it's called the African Union, the United States of Africa. So that's what's been happening just as a result of the financial crises and various fascinating things. But let's leave Africa alone for a moment and look into Europe. Do you know when Europe's constitution was framed and written? Well, it was signed on the 29th of October 2004. Here you can see the European leaders standing on their balcony for their photo opportunity. European leaders sign the European Union Constitution. So you can actually see that they've signed, they're going to sign it now. My question to you would be, where? Where do you think they would sign it, right? Probably in London. It would make sense to me. They've got the best hotels in London. They've got some nice ones in France, but they've got big conference facilities. So I wonder where they would hold it. Would you like to know where they held it? Where did they do the signing of the European Constitution, the European Union? Well, have a look at this photograph and you'll see the room. This is the actual room where the European Union Constitution was signed. Do you notice the color of carpet that all of the delegates are sitting on? Do you notice the color? Right, the color blue? Now, where is this room? Most of us wouldn't recognize it. So let me put the name underneath there so that you can read it and see whether this starts to make sense. Where are they signing the European Union Constitution? It was signed at Capitoline Hill, the Orazzi and Curiazzi Hall at the Campidoglio, the political and religious center of ancient Rome. Today, home of Rome's City Hall. That was October 29th, 2004. Okay, why do they choose Capitoline Hill? Do you know that Capitoline Hill, we have a Capitol Hill in America, and that gets its name from Capitoline Hill in Rome. Capitoline Hill gets its name from Jupiter, sun worship, the most senior deity of the sky, they called him. And in 509 before Christ, Capitolinus, the temple of Jupiter, was inaugurated. Capitolinus became the seat of government, the seat of power, and it was handed over, became Capitoline Hill, which is known today as Rome, the highest seat of authority inside the Roman system or inside the Vatican, Capitoline Hill. So at Capitoline Hill, the seat of authority of Rome, they go and sign the European Union Constitution. Now, if I'm getting married, right, and I need somebody to take a photograph of me, what type of scenery would I have? Would I go to the train station? No. Would I stand on the highway? No. You go and choose the scenery of your photograph to match the message of what you're trying to explain. So you'll stand there in a nice garden or possibly in a beautiful, tranquil place with lots of greenery to give you the impression of what the message is you're trying to convey. Now that happens with all things. All types of advertising, they use that sort of messaging system through the signal pictures. So when they're signing the European Union Constitution in Rome, what do you think the backdrop will be? What do you think will be behind them when they're signing the Constitution? Would you like to have a look? Here's a picture for you to see. There you can see sitting on our left is the United Kingdom's Prime Minister Tony Blair signing the European Union Constitution. What do you notice behind Tony Blair? Can you see it's that giant figure of the papacy? Here's another picture. Here you can see some other people signing it, the Belgian Prime Minister, Guy Verhofstadt, and the Foreign Minister, Karel de Gucht, also both signing the European Constitution in front of the papacy. Now, think about it. What's being said here, oh, and by the way, just go back for a moment and have a look at the color. Notice, let me go back. What is the color of the table? What is the color of the chair? Can you see a common link here, the commoner? Well, what are they trying to show you here? Is that whatever they are signing is under the blessing of the papacy. Do you get that? Whatever's being signed at the table has the oversight, the overview, and the backing of the papacy. This is a different way of depicting the same thing that I showed you with Cardinal McCarrick and John McCain and Obama, just in a different setting and at a different level. Now, let's go and look for a moment at an image of the Tower of Babel. This image was put together by an artist called Bruegel, right? And you can see it's an unfinished spiral type building. If you were to go to the European Union, in fact, you go to the European Union Parliament in Strasbourg, you will notice that it's built in an unfinished manner in a form of a spiral. Now, that's not by chance, because the European Union issued a poster a while ago which stated Europe, many tongues, one voice. And on it was the Tower of Babel. And as you can see, there is a crane. Now, what they said when, I can't remember who the French leader was at the time, but the French parliamentarian or boss man said, "We are rebuilding the Tower of Babel, and this time we will succeed." You see, what happened at the Tower of Babel in the beginning was that the Lord was not happy that they had decided on another Babel. Do you know what Babel means? Mikael means he who is like El, God. Michael means Mikael, he who is like God. Babel means gate to God. So Jesus is the Bab to God. Jesus is the door. I'm the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father but by me. So at the time of Nimrod, when he was building this tower of confusion, what was happening there is the Lord was showing, I don't want you to have another Babel, another gate to God. There's only one gate to God. Brothers and sisters, what's being depicted here very clearly is on that post, and I want you to look at it again, please, because you'll see there, they said this is the new Tower of Babel, a new tower of another gate to God, another way to get to God. And please have a look. You'll see there's 12 stars, right? One is hidden behind at the back there. 12 stars around the Tower of Babel. And look at the stars. They're in the form of the goat of Mendes. Can you see the horns, right? And the ears and the face of the goat. Now, Europe, many tongues, one voice. Can you see that this is the inverse of what happened at the Tower of Babel? The Tower of Babel, it was one voice and one nation, which the Lord then split up into many tongues. Now they're saying, no, Europe is many tongues but one voice. They're coming together and they're trying to undo what God did, and now they're going to put in another Babel. They don't want to worship Jesus. They want to worship the Babel of their choice. And that Babel has also got blue. Jesus has got blue. They don't want that blue. They want another Bab's blue. Let's have a look. If you look at the European Union flag, what do you notice about the colors? Can you see it's blue? And in the blue, you'll see the 12 stars, right? The 12 stars of the European Union. So what, I hear you say? So what? That's blue. Well, wait a moment. And just if you're a Catholic or if you understand what I'm talking about, here's a picture of Mary, right? This is any picture, most pictures you can use, especially the older ones. What color is she wearing? And can you see the stars around her head? Here's another picture. You can see Mary with the color blue again. And pause the DVD and count the stars. It's not just on Mary. You'll see it you'll see at the bottom there, it says Città del Vaticano. This is a coin from the Vatican. And count the number of stars on your TV screen or on your computer screen, and you will see that there are 12 stars and the color blue. Now, this is not God's blue. This is a different blue. This is the Antichrist bringing in his blue law. Now, what about the European Union? I've shown you where they went to go and sign in the Constitution. But what about modern day? What's going on at the top of the European Union? Well, have a look at this article and you'll see that it's the 13th of January last year. Tony Blair kicked off his campaign to become the European Union president. And not only did he do that, but later on, this is February 2009, the 8th of February, a year later, President Blair, the former Prime Minister, is now set to become the European Union chief as Sarkozy, the French president, battles to win him the post. There's a movement to try and put this man, this Prime Minister, this ex-Prime Minister, into the position as European Union head. Remember, we've already got a dictator in the form of the African Union head. Now we're looking for the European Union head, and we need to wonder, who's this going to be? Well, have a look at the Canberra Times, what they say. That 15th of December, I beg your pardon, last year, 2008, they came out and told us that Blair was actually a secret Catholic at number 10 Downing Street. He wasn't a Protestant like he claimed to be, he was a secret Catholic. And then 22nd of December 2007, what had happened then was Tony Blair had joined the Catholic Church. Former Prime Minister Tony Blair left the Anglican Church and has become Roman Catholic. And now you can see here what is written so clearly. Look at the date, February 6th, 2009. Wow, they've been busy this last 2-3 months. At last, Blair is free to do God, and America loves it. And note the colors on Barack Obama's wife's dress. If you understand the signal pictures, you'll know what I mean. Just have a look again at the graphic, and then I'll carry on. Can you see the blue? Right? Again, linking the European Union and the authority of blue back to the political powers around the world. Revelation 17, verse 12 to 3 reads as follows. The 10 horns that you saw are 10 kings who have not yet received a kingdom, but who for 1 hour will receive authority as kings along with the beast. They have one purpose and will give their power and authority to the beast. What does this mean? Well, let me explain. When the Lord gave us guidelines to govern every aspect of our lives, how many did he give us? 10. Do you remember? And in the statue of Daniel, when you get down to the toes, those represent the entire world. How many toes are there? 10. The number 10 biblically represents completion, or in the entire coverage, in other words. So what the Bible is saying here is those 10 horns, and let's go and read it together again. The 10 horns you saw are 10 kings who have not yet received a kingdom. What the Lord is trying to explain here is that in the world, there will be at the end of time, the whole world will be waiting to receive power. Now, I am an employer. I employ somebody, he is my employee. At the end of the week or at the end of the month, that employee comes to me and asks me for his salary. I then decide if I want to give him his salary or not. Question, who's more powerful, him or me? Obviously him, right? No, obviously me, because he receives his salary from me. Now listen to these words again and let's see if it makes sense. The 10 horns which you saw are 10 kings who have not yet received a kingdom, but who for 1 hour will receive authority. They will receive their salary as kings along with the beast. So they will receive their payment from the beast. Now listen, they have one purpose and will give their power and authority over to the beast. So just like my employee receives a salary so that he can generate money for the business, so these kings and these kingdoms will have one power. They will receive power from the beast and they will give their power back to the beast. Does that make sense? But the very next verse is absolutely critical, otherwise it doesn't make sense. Read with me what it says. These shall make war with the Lamb, and the Lamb shall overcome them, for he is the Lord of lords and the King of kings. And they that are chosen with him are called and chosen and faithful. You see, the question here is, what's going on? Why are they fiddling with this blue, the Sunday law? Why are they writing the Constitution? And what's all this blue stuff? You've got to realize that the Bible is warning that there will be a war against the Lamb. This is not our war to fight. This is Jesus' war to fight. We are his people to show the world the character of Christ. That's our role. And to spread the gospel of truth all over the world. But there's a war on, and there are those that believe that Satan is going to win the war. That's one of the biggest lies and deceptions inside these secret societies, is they believe that Jesus is literally going to win. But thank the Lord, we've got the Bible, and we can read the last couple of chapters, and we know Jesus wins. You see, these powers, as it says in Revelation 17, verse 14, these shall make war with the Lamb, and the Lamb shall overcome them. You see, they're not having war with us, they're making war with the Lamb. And not only just against Jesus, but specifically against his authority. Do you remember the three colors? What were they? Do you remember? Blue and purple and scarlet. Blue, purple, red. And the two colors of Rome, excluding the blue. Well, it's going to be through civil legislation, like the European Union, that the blue is going to be brought in. It's going to be through the American Union that the blue is going to be brought in. It's going to be through the African Union that the blue is going to be brought in. But what's happening around the world at the moment? Here's an article from 2007, November. German unions and churches form alliance against shopping, Sunday shopping, I beg your pardon. They form alliance against Sunday shopping. And I just read what's underlined. To shop or not to shop on Sundays. The seventh day, wrong answer. Sunday's not the seventh day. The seventh day should be devoted to the family. I agree, that's the Sabbath. The Protestant Church of Berlin has joined forces with the Catholic Church in the capital to seek an injunction from where? From the Federal Constitutional Court to keep shops closed. You are desecrating the day of the Lord and breaking the third commandment. Bishop Wolfgang Huber, head of the Evangelical Church in Germany, actually it's the Catholic Church because they use the third commandment, which is actually Catholicism. This church has formed an unlikely alliance with workers' unions to keep Sundays free of shopping and therefore a day of rest. You see, the Sunday law is about ensuring that you are not allowed to do what you are doing on a Sunday. A friend of mine was preaching this message in Germany a couple of weeks ago, actually a couple of months ago now, and two people in the audience came up and told him, and unfortunately he had to leave immediately, so he didn't get a copy of it, but these people actually had received 130 euro fines for fixing their roofs. They were busy on a Sunday fixing their roof. The police came up and gave them fines for breaking the Sunday law in Germany. Can you believe it? So this blue law already exists, and they're starting to flex its wings. It's starting to be tested more and more. That article was from 2007. 2007, that's correct. Let's come a little bit closer to the middle of 2008, right? You'll see here, Sunday shopping has been banned in Croatia. Croatian shops are to be closed on Sundays as of January 1, 2009 in concession to the Catholic Church. Listen on the right of the picture. The Croatian parliament has passed a law forcing shops. The parliament has passed a law forcing shops to close on Sundays in concession to the Roman Catholic Church. Exactly what we've been saying is going to happen is happening. And as of January 1st this year, the whole of Croatia shuts down on a Sunday. Let's bring it even closer. What about this European Union that we've been discussing? Well, there you have a copy of the original document, the European Parliament. This is the written declaration. And I want to highlight certain portions out of it. And by the way, you'll see the date just above written declaration. I beg your pardon, just below the paragraph under written declaration, you'll see the lapse date is the 7th of May, 2009. Brothers and sisters, that's 4 days ago. How close are we? Satan is trying everything he can, and somehow the Lord is holding back the wind. I don't know how he's doing it, but read these words with me. This is coming from the European Union Parliament. Listen to what it says. Whereas a work-free Sunday is an essential pillar of the European social model, C, Whereas according to European Union law, Sunday is the weekly rest day, D. Whereas the European institutions, bodies, and agencies have not worked on Sunday since their creation. And number one, they call on the member states, not just the European Union, but all the states associated to the European Union. Let's read that again. They call on the member states and the European Union institutions to protect Sunday as a weekly rest day. Now, this is happening at the moment, and I haven't even had an opportunity yet to find out whether this has been passed or not. We are living at the end of time, literally on the knife edge of eternity. I think it's about time we started taking this seriously. Everything that I said might happen in my previous DVD has happened, one after the other. I am not a prophet. I would never claim to be a prophet. I just plan to carry on studying the Bible to be able to understand Bible prophecy. Because if you understand Bible prophecy, the world events make absolute sense. And I want to take you back for a moment to the discussion we had just now, when we were talking about why does the government want to own shares in the banks in order to stop you from buying and selling? Do you remember that? Well, one of the groups that was nationalized in America was the world's largest bank called Citibank. And the argument I received was they're not giving the government the voting shares. They're giving the government the non-voting shares. That's not true. And you'll find out from this article from CNBC that the US government agreed to boost its stake in Citigroup to as much as 36%, shoring up the bank's capital and taking on far more control of the ailing banking giant. Listen to what happens here. The government is the new boss, said Mike Holland, the founder of Money Manager Holland in New York, very influential company. Listen, every major decision inside Citibank is something that is not going to come out of Park Avenue, which is their head office, but is something that's going to come from Washington, D.C. Every major decision within the bank is not going to come anymore from the Park Avenue. It's now going to come from Washington. So if America decides to keep the Sunday law, Washington will shut down Citibank in a wink. The decisions are no longer made by the shareholders, they are now made by Washington. And this has been done all over the world. All over the world. And that's why the statement on this Business Times article is so true. If you think your cash is safe, think again. Beware of your bank. Can you imagine there was a realization of what's going on? And people started to realize they needed to withdraw their money. There would be an international run on the banks. And people, just say for example in Australia, everyone in Australia got wind of the panic, or in America, and they ran to the banks, and everyone wanted to withdraw all their money. Do you think they would be able to maintain that, to manage that? Absolutely not. They've only got a very small percentage of the money, the value that they have in the bank. They've only got a very small percentage in liquid cash. So if you were to go and draw your money out, and your neighbor, and their neighbor, and all their brothers and sisters, they would immediately close the doors because they don't have enough cash to give the people. And that's why there are laws now in place that they can shut down your bank account in a heartbeat, depending on how you are recognized, or what's going on with you, or what the government situation is, or whether there's trouble in the government. Now, I'm in Australia at the moment, and I'm doing this recording here because I have some very interesting information which I want to share with you, especially for the Australians. And you will know the Commonwealth Bank of Australia, one of the most famous banks in Australia. I think the most famous bank. Now, there's a whole, when you go to the bank, you get lots of brochures and pamphlets and things. If I want to open up a credit card, I get lots of little pamphlets and things I'm supposed to read. How many of you read them? All of it, with its fine print. None of us read that stuff. And they're bargaining on that because I want to show you what's embedded in this. And go back to your own bank, wherever you are in the world, and have a look at this. This is just one brochure, important information about credit cards. And you can see at the bottom there it says Commonwealth Bank. And the date in the middle is the 1st of March, 2009, these are the conditions of use. If you have a credit card with a Commonwealth Bank, these are the conditions of use, the terms and conditions. Have you read your terms and conditions? Well, I want to go to page 6 and 7 of this document and highlight something. It's just a normal brochure that none of us really read. You can see there at the top it says code and then device, disclosure date, the EFT code as you're going down the left, electronic equipment, and go down then to the other side, hour, and then password, PIN. And then there's something called a prescribed person. Now, a prescribed person to me is a person, that's the identified individual. It's like prescribed medicine. If you go to the chemist, you get a prescription and you go and fetch your prescribed medicine. Or as an example, I have a prescribed diet because I have a certain blood group or whatever. You have certain prescriptions like prescribed. So when I read this, it made absolutely no sense to me until I read, and the wording was weird for me. Let me zoom in a bit and let's have a look what that paragraph says. Prescribed person, a person who appears to us either A, to be a prescribed person or entity under the Charter of the United Nations, B, to be in breach of the laws of any jurisdiction relating to money laundering or counterterrorism, C, to appear in a list of persons with whom dealings are prescribed by the government or a regulatory authority of any jurisdiction, or D, act on behalf or for the benefit of a person listed in subclauses A to C. Now, so what? Well, I realized that, in fact, I didn't even realize that somebody showed me that the spelling is different. It's not prescribed, it's proscribed. So I said, proscribed, what's that? Let me go onto the internet and have a look at dictionary.com. Here you can have a look at it and have a look what proscribe means. I'll read from the top with you that you get this with me. Proscribe is a verb, and number 1, to denounce or condemn a thing as dangerous or harmful. Number 2, to put outside the protection of the law or to outlaw. Number 3, to banish or exile. Number 4, to announce the name of a person as condemned to death and subject to confiscation of property. You see that? Proscribed isn't the prescribed person. It isn't the person whose name's on there. Proscribed, and let's go back to the previous picture now and you'll see what it means. Proscribed person is a person, have a look at the fourth one there, who is condemned to death or has subject to confiscation of property. Let's go back again. A prescribed person is a person who appears to us either to be a prescribed person or entity under the Charter of the United Nations. Can you see what they're doing here? They are starting to associate the banks to the United Nations. I said this was going to happen last year in November, and boom, there it is. The documentation coming out saying now the United Nations is going to become that central controlling hub of who is a terrorist and who isn't a terrorist. And if you are, we have the right to confiscate your money and to take everything away from you and lock you up and even put you under a death sentence. There's a big difference between prescribed and proscribed. How brilliant is that? One letter, and it makes all the difference. Now, if you understand what's going on at the United Nations, then this will make even more sense. Have a look at this video clip that I'm going to show you in a minute, and have a look what the impact of this will be. The United Nations is trying to shut down the free speech of individuals, specifically pertaining to religion. Islam is always the scapegoat, so just put Islam to the side and think about your position when the Lord calls you to accept His blue and you stand in contradiction to the blue of the Antichrist. Or if you happen to do an evangelistic crusade or teach people about the Antichrist, who he is and how he's trying to bring in these colors and what the problem is, have a look what the United Nations is trying to do to us. Please note that they pushed this bill through last November already as it's unsigned, but it's gone through. I forget the words, it'll come to me now. But then, now in March this year, they actually wanted to make it official. Watch this video clip with me.
There is a major effort taking place to curb free speech in this country, irrespective of our Constitution, our Bill of Rights. And free speech advocates say the United Nations has come down on precisely the wrong side. The United Nations has adopted what it calls a resolution combating defamation of religions. The United Nations now wants to make that anti-blasphemy resolution binding on member nations, including, of course, our own. That would make it a crime in the United States if the United Nations were to have its way to criticize religion, in particular, Islam. Kitty Pilgrim has our report.
The UN General Assembly is considering a binding resolution urging member states to make it a crime to criticize Islam.
What they would do would be to make it illegal to put out a movie or write a book or a poem which somebody could say was defamatory of Islam.
The so-called anti-blasphemy resolution would call on governments to pass their own laws to determine what can be said about religion in public. The resolution urges states to provide within their respective legal and constitutional systems adequate protection against acts of hatred, discrimination, intimidation, and coercion resulting from defamation of religion. But the U.S. says the concept of defamation of religion has another meaning. While appearing in name to promote tolerance, the implementation of this concept actually fosters intolerance and has served to justify restrictions on human rights and fundamental freedoms. Even talking about the influence of Islam on terrorism could be called criminal under this resolution if adopted by an individual country.
You are entitled to say that in America, but not if the UN has its way. They would criminalize that kind of practice, and they're trying to do it elsewhere around the world.
A group of 57 Organization of Islamic Countries, the largest bloc at the United Nations, has been pushing it out of concern, it says, over anti-Islamic behavior, saying this resolution is a major step towards sensitizing the international community on the serious impact of defamation of religions. Last December, the General Assembly passed it as a non-binding resolution. And this year, a binding resolution is expected to be introduced as early as March. Human rights activists say its influence is already being felt.
There have been a number of prominent cases, most recently in India, for instance. The editor of a newspaper was charged for reprinting an article that had initially been printed in the UK.
While the article mentioned the three major religions, Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, the editor was arrested for, quote, hurting the religious feelings of Muslims.
Did you hear that? They want to pass it, or it already has been passed as an unbinding resolution in December. Now they want to pass it as a binding resolution, right? And all member states of the United Nations are going to enforce that you will no longer be able to speak against any other religion. We don't want to speak against any other religion. We just want to speak Bible truth. And the whole world is going to have to make a decision whether you're going to accept the blue of Christ or the blue of the Antichrist. Can you see the urgency in why these DVDs have to go out all over the world? Spread them like the leaves of autumn. Get the message out. Because if they're locking up editors of a newspaper just because he's reprinting something that was already, he doesn't even come up with it himself. He's just reprinting something. That means books like The Great Controversy, that means DVDs like this will be banned possibly even this year still. The urgency is like it's never been before. I'd like to take you into the Senate for a moment. How do they pass these bills? How do they get these bills through, something as ridiculous as the one you've just heard at the United Nations? Well, in order to understand that, I want to take you into the Senate, and I want you to watch a senator reading out one of the bills. This bill is specifically H.R. 8791. Go and find it on YouTube. Go and find it on Google if you want to. This bill is passed, but before it gets passed, the senator has to read it out, and then they're allowed to take a vote whether they want it in or want it out, etc., etc. Just listen to the wording of this bill, right? When you're listening, this is the first time the senator is reading it, and you'll find that a whole lot of the information is sensitized because it's the Homeland Security and Anti-Terrorism Bill. So there's a whole lot of information which he says, oops, sorry, that's classified. But I want you, and I'm going to ask you now already, once you've watched it, go back and watch it again and go back and watch it again. You'll hear there are things such as, this is a bill to protect against flesh eating. You'll see that there's things in there about the outbreak of certain classified, etc., etc. Just listen to the words of this. I'm going to try and let it play all the way through, but if I have the inspiration to stop, then I'll have to stop it just to tell you something. But one other thing I want you to look for is that the senator gets to a point where he is reading through this bill and he says, oh, right? I'm not going to repeat the words because it's blasphemous, but just listen to the surprise in his voice when he sees what he's not allowed to read. We don't know what's in there, but you can just imagine. Listen to this bill.
Congress shall now vote for approval of H.R. 8791, the Homeland Terrorism Preparedness Bill. Said bill requests emergency response funding up to and including, I'm sorry, this section is classified, dollars to prepare for a national level terrorist attack and or attack from classified. Funding for first responder personnel and vehicles would be doubled if said attack leads to more than 80% of national population being affected by classified. This funding shall commence in conjunction with the first attack on classified or the first large-scale outbreak of classified, dependent upon which comes first. Civilian and military units shall be trained in containment and combat of classified, including irradiated classified with possibility of classified airborne, classified flesh-eating, classified, and or all of the above in such event as classified spewing, classified escape, are released or otherwise become uncontrollable. Air Force units may also be directed to combat said classified due to their enormous size and otherworldly strengths.
Did you hear the wording there? Due to their enormous size and otherworldly strengths. So what they're preparing for is not from this world. They are preparing for something else, right? Bigger than what we are normally dealing with. And if you just put the word swine flu and avian flu, etc. in there, it makes absolute sense. But listen now what he says to the breakout of the urban something or other that's worse than your worst nightmares. Listen.
Should event occur in urban areas? Jesus. That's classified, far surpassing our darkest nightmares. Should casualties exceed classified, body disposal actions shall be halted and associated resources shall be reallocated to classified underground, classified protected birthing centers. A new Bill of Rights shall be drafted and approved by classified. Having now reviewed the bill, I ask you to please cast your vote.
Can you see how it works? That's in the Senate. He's so shocked what he's reading. He can't. No. We're past our worst night. What are they preparing for? Right? There's something going on. Well, in America alone, there are over 600 concentration camps. I've given you photo footage of this already previously, but I've never given you video footage of the concentration camp until now. Now I have video footage of an Australian concentration camp which is up and running and fully manned, fully operational, and yet standing empty. Look at this.
Refugee advocates have savaged Australia's giant new offshore detention centre, calling it over the top and a waste of taxpayers' money. Despite claiming a more humane asylum seeker policy, the Rudd government says it still plans to use the $400 million Christmas Island facility.
Is this state-of-the-art for dealing with asylum seekers or an inhumane, scandalous waste of $400 million?
The centre is totally over the top. The security is extraordinarily harsh.
Last week, the Rudd government took Amnesty's Graham Thom and other leading refugee advocates on the 5-hour flight from Perth to Christmas Island to inspect our new immigration detention facility. They've now written to the minister calling the centre extremely harsh and stark, the centrepiece of a policy that is unfair and potentially harmful.
This is the environment that drives people to eventually go on hunger strikes, to sew their lips together, to jump off buildings.
It was built by the previous Howard government.
The Rudd government says children will not be put in the new centre, but others might be. It says the facility is needed as a deterrent.
We will see more boat people. There are people looking for refuge all around the world.
In fact, refugee advocates expect the Christmas Island facility will only be used occasionally, if at all. Even idle, it will cost taxpayers $9 million a year just maintaining it.
$400 million white elephant that they're not going to use because it is just too harsh.
Did you hear the figures? It cost the the Howard government $400 million to put in this concentration camp. And it costs them $9 million a year just to maintain it. And it's standing empty. What for? Because it's fun? No, there's a plan going on. You know that there's one concentration camp in Alaska which is said to hold 2 million people? These are big, big places. And it's about time that we realize that the final events are right in front of us. You know that in 2007 already, the FBI started putting together the database, their final biggest database. Listen, the FBI prepares vast database of biometrics. The $1 billion project is to include images of irises and faces. They will be able to determine people and recognize people just walking through an airport from the face scans and the iris scans, which we already know are available, but not on a worldwide scale. This is something which they're putting in for worldwide control. This is part of the new world order that we've been speaking about over and over and over and over. Now today, I don't have to prophesy anymore. I can just click a button and you can see it. Today it's history. Today, my brother and my sister, you have two choices. You can either accept the Antichrist's blue Sunday law, or you can accept Jesus Christ's blue Sabbath law. Blue you will accept. That's a given. But are you going to willingly say, Jesus, I love you, and if you love me, keep my commandments? That's what he says. So if you love him, you keep his. Or are you going to reject it and literally accept the frontal lobe decision of accepting the blue Sunday law? This world has literally got nothing left in it. There is nothing left for us here. The only solution we have is Jesus and heaven. Brothers and sisters, work, work, and work while there still is time, because time is almost finished. Listen what she writes in Christ Object Lessons, page 69. When the fruit is brought forth, and she's quoting from Mark 4, verse 29, when the fruit is brought forth, immediately he will put in the sickle because the harvest is come. What fruit, Lord? Tell us. Christ is waiting with longing desire for the manifestation of himself in his church. When the character of Christ shall be perfectly reproduced in his people, then he will come to claim them as his own. Christ is waiting for himself to be reflected in his church. You just look into the church at the moment and you'll see there's a problem. The church does not reflect Jesus Christ. He's going to shake it, he's going to clean it, and he's going to purify to himself a peculiar people. But just like she wrote in Testimonies, Volume 9, the agencies of evil are combining their forces and consolidating. You can see it now in the news. They are strengthening for the last great crisis, and the great changes are soon to take place in our world, and the final movements will be rapid ones. One influence is working for the purification of the church, the other for the corrupting of the people of God. Although there are evils existing in the church, and there will be until the end of the world, the church in these last days is to be the light of the world that is polluted and demoralized by sin. God's church is supposed to be the light of the world. Jesus says, I'm the light of the world. You are the light of the world. And he wants us to reflect his character and his nature. Brothers and sisters, the Sunday law is coming. Please understand, we are closer. Just the 4 or 5 months that have gone between the last time I spoke to you and now, 6 months. In the last 6 months, you can see how busy they've been. Where are we going to be in a year's time? Please don't waste time. The Sunday law is closer than you think. Thank you for your time.